three hot topics of the current news cycle are trade in China, geopolitics in Afghan, and COVID and Code Red for Humanity. And they have a very common connection in the Indo US relationship. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the US attending to the Quad Nations meeting comprising US, India, Japan, and Australia, with the intent of a shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. India becomes centric to US's geopolitical strategy in the region, with the Afghan crisis still boiling. Politics can never be separated from trade, as they have a yin and yang relationship. No conversation can be complete without the reference to COVID these days. While at it comes the recent announcement of UN scientists, Code Red for Humanity. How can life on Earth get a break? How can we become smart about thriving sustainably rather than starting and stopping for survival? Organizations such as the US India Strategic Partnership Forum, USISPF, play a great role in advancing dialogue between government and industry. Dr. Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO of USISPF since 2018, has proactively advocated policy to drive economic growth, entrepreneurship, employment creation, and innovation to create a more inclusive society. Giggr is aiming to redefine the flow of work, fusing people and technology with intelligence that transforms talent and enterprises to reimagine how work is created, configured, and collaborated global ecosystem. I'm Subbu Iyer, and I'm deeply privileged to welcome Dr. Mukesh Aghi to this thought leadership conversation, a series that curates learnings from leaders across the globe on the subject of the future of work. I have no doubt that Dr. Aghi's leadership will steer the Indo US relationship to new levels, and his contribution to a new world will be invaluable. Welcome, Dr. Aghi. Let me, without further ado, shoot the first question. Increasing the rate of innovation in our societies is a current raging challenge. Can you tie the perspectives of innovation to your goal of increasing the estimated bilateral trade between US and India to reach 238 million from the current 142 billion? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Subbu. Thank you for having me on your fireside chat. And it's a pleasure and delight to connect with you. I think innovation is a challenging subject in an emerging economy because innovation is tied to an ecosystem where you have proper education, the right environment, right resources, and right demand, which connect with each other along with the funding to move things forward. So when we look at the innovation in India, for example, it is one of the lowest in the world, I would say. And the reason I make that statement is our education system is more of a rote learning than research-based education system. So right there, the foundation is not focused on trying to drive innovation. I looked at a number of patents coming out of India. Almost 90% of patents coming out of India are held by multinationals which have set up R&D labs in India. And while we are seeing the local companies pick up the pace in trying to bring more innovation and patents, it is the multinational companies which are still leveraging the Indian ingenuity to bring in innovation. So I think we have to look at the structural change into the whole education environment, into the industrial and academic partnership, into the VC funding to drive this innovation. So I think we have a long, long way to go. To answer the second part of the question, will it drive the uh, trade between India to be over $238 billion? I think that momentum continues. And the reason I'm saying is because a lot of exports from India, for example, the largest export from India is IT services. And then you go into the jewelry maker and leather maker, those are the exporters to the US. We're still not seeing high end manufacturing coming to US from India. And so I think the trade will grow, but it will grow in the non innovative products rather than just very, very innovative products itself.
Which actually leads a great segue to my next question, Mukesh. Um, AI and digital, artificial intelligence and digital, have in some ways or the other occupied center stage in Prime Minister Modi's conversation with industry leaders on his in the last couple of days. Where do you see, both digital as well as USISPF playing a prominent role in being able to promote? Um, and you rightly identified that it's a long way, but given the fact that you're playing a critical role in bridging this gap between government and societies with enterprises, what do you have any initiatives going? How do you see this moving forward? What are your perspectives?
Two separate subjects, digitization and AI. Let me address the first one. I think for government to be successful in providing efficient and effective services to citizens, technology plays a very pivotal role. Digitalization brings in more transparency. It also basically takes away substantial amount of corruption, and we have seen this. One of the biggest thing which government of India has done is starting with Aadhaar card, and then moving into payment gateways, moving into government services, moving into the RTR response time. What we're seeing in the last 10 years is India is transforming by opening over 400 million bank accounts under Prime Minister Modi, and having direct transfer to the recipient has really brought in substantial amount of transparency, at the same time taken away middleman corruption itself. So I think digitization is not just about technology, it's a way of life, it's about improving government services, improving quality of life of citizens itself. And I think that continues. Today, if you look at uh, the payments in India on goods and services and digital is still less than 5%. And it is still a very cash oriented economy. We need to move this needle to a much, much larger number to bring more efficiency to the economy itself. When you look at from train reservation to bus reservation to hotel reservation, we've seen much more higher transparency coming in because people are leveraging that more and more. So I think digitization is a journey which started and it will continue moving forward as citizens adopt to the new services or newer technology itself. Now, the AI is a different animal in the sense is what we are talking about is machines and technologies which learn on their own and keep on improving. And I think that India is still a laggard when I benchmark with China and other geographies itself. So I think we have to start investing more and more in AI to make intelligent machines to improve your first question on innovation, to improve on services, to improve on bringing more efficiency as you keep on driving growth in the industrial aspect of the economy itself. So I think we still have a long, long way to go in AI, but AI will play a very pivotal role in our day-to-day life, in R&D, in safety, in defense, in warfare, and I think that's where India needs to invest more.
So, great points here, Mukesh. We talk about one critical aspect that it needs that will trigger this is basically talent transformation, right? And this talent transformation needs to meld with work orchestration uh, as well. And what are the trends that you are seeing, in the US as well as advanced economies, and what are the lessons that you're able to take and build those conversations and build that dialogue between government and enterprise and societies at USISPF to make the transformation a more wholesome one. Not stop and start, not make investments that don't yield the necessary larger picture or the returns on assets. So my basic question here is, how are you looking at this solution from a long-term perspective, but more importantly, with a sense of urgency? Because when we talk about, for example, social justice and the need for climate change, they are not something that we're talking about in the long term, and they are interrelated because it's basically it's human created, and we all agree on it to a large extent, I guess. So my question therefore is, how do you see that catalyzing? What kind of a catalytic role can USISPF play, and what are you seeing in terms of trends, and how can we shape the future from the present?
We have embarked on a journey on a lot of areas to bring transformation, be it on the environment, be it on sustainability, be it on renewable, be it on trying to create a better working environment or drive job growth strategy. Uh, and it is akin to trying to boil the ocean. So what we are trying to do is look at where can we see the impact on what we do in the next 3 to 5 years. We are not focused on quarterly numbers here. We're looking at that. And I think that requires a close partnership between the industry, citizens, and governments, and also NGOs. And it is trying to orchestrate a working relationship. For example, we are working very closely on the issue of sustainability with the Secretary Kerry's organization and India itself. And so we embarked on few of the initiatives, for example, recycling, plastic, water, air, and other areas. And we have project teams trying to look at some cost-effective technologies which we can bring to India and start improving some of the factors which we have aligned, which has an impact on quality of life of citizens. So I think our focus from a USISPF perspective is to partner on those initiatives. We are on an early part of the journey. The results will measure years from now. But I would say that we're in the right path because we are working very closely on both governments and companies on both sides, and also with NGOs to have an impact. And we have roughly around, I would say, dozen projects which we are working on to drive these initiatives across both geographies itself.
Which is great. And I think you keep saying this, and I keep hearing you, and you're absolutely right. This has to be a very sustained effort, and you have to be able to bring about believable stories, right? However, there is a huge concern that even before some of these technologies, whether it be digital technology, whether it be artificial intelligence, or whether it be even simple e-commerce or v-commerce that we're talking about, that we're still in, right, that we have been experiencing in the last 10 odd years. The concern is data privacy, right? And many of these can become no starters very easily if we are not able to resolve this issue of data from the perspective of privacy, security, ownership. Um, is there any initiative from the USISPF's perspective that you are developing that might enable a cohesive idea of data, how data should be treated, whether it be from an individual standpoint, whether it be from an enterprise's standpoint, whether it be from a governmental standpoint? How should data be treated, and who should have the ownership? Is there any initiative that you're working towards?
So we're working on quite a bit of initiatives in that area. You have to understand technology always leads, is a disruptor, and policy follows. And at the moment, on the data side, well, data is being generated all across. The issue of privacy has become a dominant issue for everybody. And the question you have to ask is, who owns the data? And and you have to understand, while everybody says data is the new oil, you have to understand a stagnant data loses its value. If once you balkanize the data, its validity is gone. But if the data flows, it strengthens its validity, and its significance becomes much more enormous to everybody. So I think we have to find a balance that you don't balkanize the data, but at the same time you're able to leverage that. So there are multiple questions we need to address. One is, who is the owner of data? In our belief that individual has a right to his or her own data. You are the owner of that data, and any usage of that needs to have permission. So far, our organization has been using people's data, marketing it, selling it, and I think that has to stop in a way that individual privacy is not revealed. That's number one. Number two is earlier we talked about artificial intelligence. Uh, let's take the example of facial recognition. Uh, when you look around, governments, in the name of national security, in the name of terrorism, are setting up facial recognition system all across, from shopping malls to streets to airports. And the question really becomes is they can monitor you, where you are, not only just with the facial recognition system, but from your mobile phone, your movement. And that's where I think we have to find a balance. Where does national security comes in, and where does the privacy of an individual comes in? Because uh, unless we are able to define a process policy in that area, governments will get more and more powerful, and individual data, individual privacy becomes questionable also. And we're seeing that in China. A very very interesting example I want to give you is CNN, in their effort to see how long they can hide under the surveillance system of Chinese government, and basically the maximum time they figured out they can hide is only 11 minutes. They can track you down in any city, any village, anytime. To
Right.
me, that's Orwellian. That's not acceptable, and to me, that's a violation of individual privacy. But at the same time, I think you need data to ensure you can mine it to provide better services. Look at the terrorist threats coming in, but at the same time improve products also. So I think that process uh, is a work in progress that continues as societies debate as to what is right, what is wrong. But we are working very closely with government of India. They have a parliamentary committee where we have a team recommending. We're doing the same thing in the US also. So it is a work in progress. We don't have the final answer, but we'll continue supporting both sides of the ocean.
If you will permit me, Mukesh, to just stay on that subject for just a moment more. You are someone who has straddled, for example, both parts of the ocean, right? The India and the US. and you started very early on the Democratic Party side, and in your career, and your entrepreneurship or your entrepreneurship has taken you worldwide. You were with IBM, and you have a very intimate understanding of the cultural ethos of trying to find that balance, right? Because when we talk about democracy, there is a lot more perhaps open approach to dialogue in the United States than it is in India, irrespective of what political dispensation it might be. So the cultural factor on this aspect of data privacy, security, ownership, protection. Um, how do you see that breaking those cultural barriers? I personally know you have done that at an enterprise level. So how do you do that at a societal level? That's my question.
I think, Subbu, individuals can change and adopt and accept that change much faster than societies, because everybody has different personalities, different learning pace, and different acceptance to change itself. And it will take time. But I also believe in India, we can accept change and differences much faster because we live in a very multicultural, multi ethnic environment. So we work with every aspect of uh, individual, be it from a religious perspective, be it from a color perspective, language, or culture. So Indians are much more adaptive to that differences and accepting of those differences itself. I think what we are seeing is a challenges in the US at the moment to that change, because what is happening is as technology comes in, uh, what we are seeing is that the the authorities are being questioned more and more. Classic example with the Floyd case. If somebody had not videotaped the incident, uh, we wouldn't know what really happened. And
Right.
what we are seeing in more and more of those incidents are coming in, and the question really becomes is a society accepting that change or not? And I think I have to say US is also accepting it because it is a melting pot of global communities, and they live almost together in peace and prosperity. So I think change in a societal way takes a little longer, whereas from an individual perspective, it moves much, much faster. So I think you will see that as technology comes in, some companies and countries will adopt to that change, while others who will not adopt will be left behind.
Right. Um, which I'm now going to ask you something which is probably a controversial topic or has been a controversial topic in the US, with perhaps divided right along the lines of party lines. So 200 billion is the estimated damage of climate change in 2020 alone, just in the United States. In India, it has been 141 billion in the same period, 322 times higher than the annual budget of India's environmental ministry. Um, I personally believe that USISPF can play a very significant role in being able to shape ideas, opinions, and even action, on the ground, in both US and India. I would want to hear your perspectives, your ideas about what's going on and how you see this movement going forward, because there is a great sense of urgency. We have had UN scientists just declare code red for humanity. I mean, it's not to be taken lightly, and there must be a great sense of urgency about it.
20 years ago, Al Gore came out with a documentary called An Inconvenient Truth. And if you look at the documentary, everything it said has come out true.
Yes.
Climate change is for real, regardless of what party you belong to. This summer has been the hottest summer ever recorded in the US history. Uh, what we are seeing is massive amount of hurricanes, tornadoes, massive rain, which have come through and damaged the environment, cities, and across the citizen itself. So I think one thing we need to understand: climate change is happening, and we need to accept that it is happening. And if it continues the way it's going, our planet is in peril. We will see more and more damages coming. In fact, as you mentioned about the scientists, that by 21st century, if the temperature goes up by 2%, 2 degrees, you will see a massive amount of hunger coming in, massive amount of flooding coming in, because crops will get destroyed. You know, Housing next to the oceans will get destroyed because rise in the water level. So I think we need to, one is get away from the debate that is climate change for real or not. It is for real. Now the question is who has a role to help us mitigate that? Obviously governments, companies, and citizens. And that's where we have to look at what do we do to ensure that we are not contributing towards that momentum, because we need to slow that momentum down. I'm not talking about reversing it, slowing it down for before we start talking reversing it. And so we are working with companies, and also both countries, on quite a few initiatives to ensure that at least there is a slowdown. For example, moving to EV vehicle. What do we need to do to drive the policy in that area? What do we have to do to bring the cost of ownership of those EV vehicles? And how do we bring mobility? Does every citizen need to have a car? Can we provide mobility programs across cities so cities become carless itself? So we have a lot of initiatives across the board between India and the US trying to support those initiatives and trying to slow down the climate change. Can we reverse it? I don't know. But at least I know we can slow it down before the damage becomes permanent.
So, just an auxiliary question to that. There is a company called NRIP in the United States, which has invented a patented application of water dripping. Using and that water is drip happens through Earth's gravity. You using the Earth's gravity in order to distribute drips of water, as opposed to a conventional irrigation system. I mean, and we you come from Punjab and you understand the rivers flowing and across, and I think we have to change with times. The idea of how irrigation and agriculture happens, and this is a wonderful example of a invention that has happened in the United States, and it is successfully prototyped and applied in the industry. Now, can USISPF bring some technology of that nature, or even the company, to India very, very quickly, as you mentioned in the and enable a rapid institutionalization, if you may, because in India water is a major problem. And it's been a major problem for the last 20 years, whereas it's just now that they say half of the United States is drowning while the other half is actually doesn't have water, right? So I think the question there is, how do, if you can take pipes instead of getting petroleum from Ontario, Canada, into Wisconsin, can you basically take pipes of water from the east coast to the west coast, right? Something very similar. Can we bring something to India, where this is the fundamental part? India is still fundamentally an agricultural society. Can we show some fundamental gains in being able to address, because that is, it will reduce damage. You leave alone the investments into environmental protection. Reducing the damage perhaps is the first aspect, before we can get to even the part of a solution to it. So my question is, um, can there be a proactive identification of such areas with priorities, or is there already one that USISPF is already doing? Sorry for the long question.
No, I think uh, you look at Southern California, they have not had rains for the last 4 years.
Right.
And you look at Northern California, fires are burning it, the Northern California. You look at East Coast, flooding day in, day out.
Yeah.
And so what we are seeing is unevenness in the weather, and that's having an impact on resources. Uh, the Colorado River is dried up. That's where Southern California got its water from. You look at Punjab, it has now one of the highest per capita cancer rate in India. And the reason is because of excessive use of fertilizers, uh, excessive use of water. Over 90% of the water in Punjab is for irrigation. And if you make it more efficient, you'll use less and less of that. So we are working with the companies who are able to provide these kind of drip irrigation methodologies. And it's not just drip irrigation. You have basically IoTs inserted into the soil, which looks at the basically nitrogen level. It looks at the soil, how much water the soil has, how much it more needs. It tied to the satellites to look at the weather forecasting. On that basis, you're able to efficiently use the resources rather than wasting it. And so we have started that process. For example, 30% of the food in the US is wasted on the plate, whereas
Right.
30% of the food in India is wasted in the field. And
Right.
so you're working on cold supply chain, storage environment for these farmers, so they're able to, store the crops at a very cost efficient manner. So we are, to answer your question, working with multiple companies in the U.S. to bring some of this agriculture technology into India and partner with some of the large corporations who are trying to bring uh, or invest in these areas itself. So yes, we are working on it. It's a slow process, but I think we are seeing some quick results coming through that.
Mukesh, these are extraordinary times, and I know you wake up every day to challenges, and perhaps when you go back to bed, it's like wondering how much you have accomplished or achieved. So it's a daily challenge, it's a daily grind. But I sincerely appreciate that in spite of the time pressures, you've taken time to talk to me. So I want to respect your time. I can't let you go without putting on the philosopher's hat on your head to ask you a question, which I think you would love to answer, which is, you know, uh, how can we as a society, in order to make this transition, from our past into the future, this critical point of inflection, or the strategic point of inflection as we see it, demands that we try and create a human ecosystem, or we put the human ecosystem ahead of the financial ecosystem. Now this is something which is a philosophical thought. It's very, very difficult for businesses to understand. But you coming from both the industry, a political background, and then also from being now in USISPF, which does to a large extent pro bono work, right? I really want to understand from you: is that a esoteric dream, or is it a impossibility? Because that's the foundation of human system on this planet, right? I mean, humans are the primary, humans and animals and living beings, let's put it that way. How do we put humans ahead of money?
That's a difficult one to answer, Subbu, because I think in a capitalist environment, it's the capital which plays the pivotal role, not the humans. While humans do all the work, the importance of capital is just too big. And when you look at last 100 years, is the concentration of capital in smaller hand, which is driving the split in society today. Uh, During pandemic, you have people who went belly up, or people who didn't have food to eat, and then you had certain segment of the society or individuals who made hundreds of billions of dollars in profit on logistics, supply chain, and everything. It's a question which is difficult to answer because we as individuals have to decide on our own what's the priority in front of us. And what I'm seeing among the younger generation, especially millenniums, they're not as much driven towards asset accumulation, but more towards experience of lives. And to me, that's a tremendous change, because what happens is hopefully the next generation will put human values in front, instead of having capital accumulation in front itself. So I think I see some change happening. I see some regression taking place, but that's our planet Earth, and what we see also is individuals who make a lot of effort in trying to bring that change. You have to basically answer one question, and that is, you know, am I being a parasite in this world, or am I being a contributor? And what kind of legacy do I want to leave when I'm gone? Because I think every individual needs to contribute to the well-being of this planet. And yes, it's okay to go create wealth, but there has to be a balance between accumulating wealth and balance between bringing the change and contributing to the society and to the planet itself. And that's we all have to decide on our own. What is that balance? And I think that's decided a lot by our upbringing, our education, our environment. And I would say that that's the constant struggle each individual human being is going to go through, because you have some which are at the economic starvation. For them, trying to get food is an everyday running need. And then you have very wealthy individuals who are looking at some kind of immortality in their name. And so both have different objectives, different philosophy. So I think it's a constant struggle. Each individual have to take a call as to where you want to be in that extremity, and what kind of legacy you want to leave behind.
On that note, thank you so much, Dr. Aghi. I know I took the personal liberty of addressing you as Mukesh several times, but that's because out of familiarity. But I must say with deep humility that I am honored to have this conversation with you. And I will definitely look forward to more. But time is of great importance to you right now. And so thank you so much for this time that you invested. And I'm sure that those who will see this on the digital platform and in the social media will have great appreciation for it. Dr. Aghi, thank you so much for being here.
So, well, thank you very much. It's good to see you. Thank you for your time, and I enjoyed the conversation. Yeah,
Thank
wonderful
you.
day. Thank you.
You